Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. Here with Johnny. How's it going, Johnny?
What's going on, man? Everything's going well. All-Star break just finished, so got that nice little relaxing break. Got to take some time off, but ready for hoops to be back. It's March, so now March Madness is around the corner as well. I know this is an NBA show, but got to shine some love to what may be the greatest sporting event that's hosted yearly. So excited for that to be back even without fans. So other than that, nothing much new. What's going on with you?
Yeah, as you said, I'm definitely excited for March Madness. I'm currently at home. I was at home last week as well, but I'm wearing this jersey right here, Indiana Pacers. I'll give you one guess, Johnny. Who do you think this is?
Danny Granger.
Danny Granger. I like that. I like that you knew right away. But yeah, not much else pretty much going on with me. Just thought I'd throw in a little spice at the beginning. But we're going to get into the first thing, which is our thoughts on All-Star Weekend. Last week we made our All-Star picks. Just kind of a little summary of like the whole weekend and like what went on. Like, what did you think of the 2021 All-Star really day? It wasn't like a weekend, but All-Star Sunday.
Yeah, I'd say aside from the no fans aspect and all that, there wasn't a whole lot to be like thrilled with. For me, I'm always a 3-point contest guy, so that at least lived up to its hype. It's hard for the 3-point contest to not live up to its hype unless everybody just is super cold and there's one guy that just makes a decent amount of shots. But there was competition. Curry's last three was the winner, so there was at least some sort of, like I said, competition. It wasn't like a runway winner, and that's kind of what I like to see. The dunk contest was a dunk contest. Three smaller-ish names. Didn't even have a fourth participant. Happened at halftime of the All-Star game. Thought the best dunk was Cassius Stanley's first dunk that didn't even get close to a 50 and then kind of took him out of contention. So that wasn't very fun. The skills challenge is just, it's not that much fun anymore. It's cool seeing a big guy win, but it's like Luka was like walking up and down the court. It wasn't even like he was trying. And then the All-Star game's the All-Star game. The Elam ending is something I like and think that would be actually really cool if the NBA implemented it so that we don't see teams following each other all the time in the last minute of the game. But even that game wasn't super competitive, even towards the end. LeBron's team was just much better. Didn't help that KD was injured. Didn't help that Joel Embiid couldn't play. But you know what you're getting out of the All-Star game. So it was an weekend. I guess that's kind of the word I keep coming back to is just
Yeah, and not only that, but like, people like LeBron barely even played in the All-Star game. So a lot of these guys that were coming off the bench were doing most of the damage in the game. As you said, the dunk contest, it was weird for Cassius Stanley. I think it's because, they were all dunk contest champions, and they're like, we're going to grade harder than, guys like, D-Wade or Scottie Pippen or all the people that were on the thing last year, Candace Parker, because, they've won it before. So it's like, you're going to have to reach this level to match us. And then I think they realized after the first dunk that, okay, maybe we're being like too strict. And then they started making it a little bit, I think, easier for the rest of the way. 3-point contest wasn't that bad. Skills challenge, I thought, was fine. I just feel like I feel like it's really quick now, like the skills challenge. Like, it seems a lot quicker than it used to be. Maybe that kind of takes some of it away. But I will ask you, Giannis in the All-Star game went 16 of 16, 3 of 3 from 3-point range. Granted, he banked 2 of them in, but it was still pretty impressive. Did you think that I've seen some people on social media say he didn't deserve it because it wasn't as flashy. Do you think he did or didn't deserve it? And if not, do you think someone like Steph Curry or Damian Lillard did in his place?
Yeah, you mentioned the two front runners where if you didn't give it to Giannis, I think you gave it to one of Steph or Dame. Both hit ridiculous shots from just how deep they were to Dame's being the game winner. But I think it's perfectly warranted that Giannis won it. I'm not throwing a fit that Giannis won it, but I also wouldn't be opposed to somebody like Dame or Steph taking home that award. So kind of neutral on that feeling. The one thing I do want to mention with the skills challenge is, yes, it is shorter because I remember they used to have to do both a bounce pass and a chest pass, but now it's just the chest pass, I believe. So I think I'd like to see some more passing implemented into it instead of just one pass and then, okay, who's fast enough to go run down to one side, hit a layup, and then run and hit a three. To me, that's not as much skills as is the passing.
Yeah, and I mean, when you have two people going at once, it kind of takes some of that away. They used to use the whole court for it, but I don't know. And I like the way that it ends off like with a dunk too, like in the past, where everyone's just battling for time. But I don't know. That was my thoughts on it. I think especially like the dunk contest, kind of like 2017 dunk contest after a great one last year. You knew this year was probably going to be, you know, a Walmart version of the year prior.
Yeah.
And
to say the
really,
least.
like with all the circumstances, it just wasn't as good.
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot more to add. You kind of hit on it. We knew that we weren't going to see the greatest of greatest dunk contests. We knew we weren't going to see the greatest of great All-Star games, but at least we still got to see something, and for that we should be thankful.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. But we're going to start talking about some of these trades and acquisitions and rumors that have been happening lately because the trade deadline is just around the corner, along with the signing deadline for a playoffs roster. The first thing, which was the biggest thing that probably happened, I believe it was on the day of the All-Star game, or maybe it was the day before, but Blake Griffin, you know, he's agreeing to go to the Nets after being bought out by the Pistons. And a lot of people are saying, it seems like kind of 50-50. There's 50% of people saying this puts the Nets way over the top, and now they're, you know, way favorited over these other teams like Lakers, Clippers, Bucks. And then there's other people saying that Blake Griffin's just washed. He's going to ruin the team in a sense, and that these other teams don't have anything to worry about. Where do you think the Blake Griffin move puts the Nets?
So on a scale of two extremes, you mentioned you got this is 2014 Blake Griffin, and now this team's unbeatable. And then you got this guy can't even dunk, he's washed. I'm closer to the he's washed side, and that's just because I don't think we're going to see 2014 Blake Griffin. Like, I don't think we're going to see reminiscence of that. They even said Blake Griffin is going to be used as a small ball five. It's possible that in certain playoff games he doesn't even see the court at all. Because you have DeAndre Jordan, you can play Jeff Green at the five. They might not be done in the trade in the buyout market, so there's things to go around there. But I don't think that Blake Griffin's like washed. He's just a different player. He's not the post-up player. He's not the flashy dunker anymore. He's an improved three-point shooter. He's an improved ball handler. He's an improved playmaker. But he's just going to be used in spotty situations. He's a situational player now. Maybe in the playoffs you can play him against a team that has a small ball five in their second unit. But if you face a team like the Sixers that runs out Dwight Howard as their backup five, probably doesn't seem like the best spot to use Blake Griffin. So I think it just gives them another weapon that they can add to their arsenal, but I don't think it's somebody that's going to like prove to put them over the top and just like make everybody else fight for second instead of still having a shot at winning the title.
Yeah, I think a big reason why they did sign him originally is just because these other teams couldn't get him. And we might see that with, you know, someone that we'll get to later on the San Antonio Spurs. But I think for Blake Griffin, I don't know. I think that he can contribute as a fourth. I mean, he's not going to be asked to do nearly as much as he was in Detroit, where he was the main guy. And let's not forget, like, he was All-NBA, third team, but still All-NBA and an All-Star just 2 years ago. Now, I'm not saying he's going to play like an All-Star or anything like that, but I think that when he's got, like, he doesn't have to be the guy that, you know, shows up every game. And I think of it in the way like the Miami Heat, when they had the big three, you had your LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, and then they added Ray Allen. Like, Ray Allen didn't need to do, you know, everything. Like, he hit the big shot, which forced Game 7 in 2013, and then they won the title. But if I remember correctly, I don't even know if he scored in Game 7. But I think these flashes that Blake Griffin could have for the Nets could be huge for them. And I think that, you know, like, I think once he got bought out last week, I think we talked about it a little bit last week, and I said he could be like a Josh Smith, Corey Brewer moment when they had like the Rockets team 5 or 6 years ago. I could definitely see Blake Griffin doing that. And then people are like, well, he's really not that bad. I don't think he's necessarily washed, but I don't think that I don't think he's washed, but I don't think he's going to play like an all-star either. I think that he's going to adjust to his role, per se.
Yeah, he's nothing more than like probably like at max 20 minutes a game kind of thing. Like, don't expect him to get a whole lot of minutes. It's just what can he do in the limited minutes he gets? Can he be a spark? Can he provide some energy? It's little things like that. Like, we need to temper our expectations, but I also don't think that we should conclude that a player's washed because they're not doing a whole lot on the Detroit Pistons. Because the Pistons are just one of the sorriest franchises in the league right now. Like, there's no other way around it. Players leave the Pistons and have bigger impacts elsewhere. Like, that's just what happens. So I wouldn't put it past him that Blake Griffin still has some gas left in the tank, but I don't think he's anywhere near the player that he used to be.
Yeah, and if he does have some gas left, that could be a problem for these other teams like we mentioned. But we're going to move on to the New York Knicks, who are also eyeing multiple guards in the trade market. Victor Oladipo, who would be a free agent this summer, Terry Rozier and Lonzo Ball have been like some of the most prominent names. Do you understand where the Knicks are coming from, looking at all these guys for a trade, and do you think any of them could realistically happen?
I don't put anything past the Knicks because it's the Knicks, but like when I sit here and think about it, just think about the guards that the Knicks already have on their roster. It probably makes up like 4 of the 5 best players on the Knicks. 3 of the 5 best players, and then Quickly, who's like their young, promising rookie. It's Quickly, Derrick Rose, Elfrid Payton. Payton's still getting 30-plus minutes a game. Derrick Rose, they didn't trade for him to do nothing. You have R.J. Barrett as well. So you have those 4 guards. And now everybody they're looking at is a guard. It's like, I don't know if it's just that they're looking at the wrong position or if I'm seeing things in a different light, but I'm not keen or I'm not understanding necessarily what they're trying to do. It's not that I think any of these 3 players are bad fits or bad players, but it's like a couple of years ago when all the Knicks did was sign power forwards and centers, and it's like, what are they doing? And now this year, it's like the exact opposite. It's a bunch of guards, and it's like, where are they going with this? So there's a bit of confusion there. All of them are realistic, I guess. Yeah, like Oladipo, I don't think there's a chance that he even signs a long-term deal in Houston, so Houston would be wise to get him out of there. In terms of Terry Rozier, you have Devontae Graham, and you have LaMelo Ball, so there's at least 2 guards there. And then in terms of the third one, Lonzo Ball, we don't really know what the Pelicans want to do. Like, they want to build around Zion and Brandon Ingram, but we don't know if they think that Lonzo is like a good complement to those 2. So it's very plausible that all 3 do get traded at some point this year. So I wouldn't put it past it that either of those 3 do end up on the Knicks. I'm just not sure I see the fit.
Yeah, I think, like you said, all of them could realistically happen, but the only one that I feel like would make sense for the Knicks would maybe be Terry Rozier. Since LaMelo's been playing so well for the Hornets, they still have Devontae Graham, of course, who could play off the ball. And like Gordon Hayward's pretty much their best player right now. Like, they have a lot of guys on that team in like the 1, 2, 3 spot that Terry Rozier is not necessary there. But like going for Oladipo, he's likely going to leave no matter what. Even if the Knicks make the playoffs and say they surprise someone and get to like the second round, he's probably still leaving and going somewhere where he could have a better chance to win, whether that's Miami or somewhere else. And then Lonzo Ball, I don't really understand having Lonzo there. That just doesn't seem like a good fit, at least for me. But I don't know. I feel like maybe they should be looking at Terry Rozier a little bit, and if not, then I don't know if they should go through with any of these.
Yeah, I like Lonzo a lot as a player, and I think this year he's much improved. And if LaMelo wasn't in the league and playing as well as he was, that Lonzo would be getting some of the respect that he deserves for the improvement, not only of his three-point shooting, but his all-around game. But like you said, the fit just doesn't necessarily seem natural. So it's not just about the quality of the player, but also the fit of the player when considering matches, teams that they may succeed on.
Yeah, and another player who hasn't been a great fit with the team he's been on this year, it's been a little bit of a controversial, to say the least, is LaMarcus Aldridge, who apparently, as of yesterday, him and the Spurs are mutually agreeing to like part ways. Now, they still like have him under contract. They're probably going to trade him before the deadline. Do you see him helping out, any other team? And do you think that this would affect the Spurs? Because right now they're like 7th in the West. Do you think that maybe it drops them down to like 9 or 10, and then it hurts them for the play-in games, or what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have any expectations on what happens with Aldridge necessarily, like in terms of, because if they can't find a trade partner, then they'll just buy him out. In terms of a team that's going to go after him, I'm not so sure. It's crazy that he's 35. He has the third most field goals among active players in the league. Like, he's been around for a while, and he can still contribute to a team. Like, he can give more than Blake Griffin can give at this point in his career. So I'd like to see him on a contending team. Him on those Portland Trailblazers teams was always a pleasure to watch with Dame. But I just don't know, I don't know what team would want to, because if you have to trade for him, you have to match contracts, and that's where things get iffy, especially when you have players on larger contracts. Then you have to match the dollar amounts, and things happen that way. When you buy somebody out, they're free to sign anywhere. And that's kind of what happened with Blake. So there it was, okay, now which team wants him, not which team can afford to trade for him. So I don't know. I don't know where he's going to go. But I certainly think for the Spurs, it just opens up more playing time for two of their younger players in Luka Šimanić and Devin Vassell. So I think that's like a bright spot where, as even if they don't get the playoff spot they wanted or can't climb up the ranks, they can at least give these young guys a shot and see what they're made of. So I think it's, in terms of the word mutual agreement, it means that both sides were in agreement of what happened. I think this is better for both sides. Aldridge, older in his career, gets a chance to go to a contending team. The young guys on the Spurs, they get a chance to develop them. So I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep it short. I don't think that the Spurs really take much of a loss here, agreeing to part ways with LaMarcus Aldridge, especially since the way they've been playing so far this year, with him basically falling out of the rotation. You know, he started off as the guy next to DeRozan. Now guys like DeJounte Murray, Derek White came back from injury, and now they're starting to get like more of the touches. LaMarcus gets bumped basically to the bench, and then he had problems with that. And right now they're still sitting firmly in the playoffs, so I don't think that he affects them that much in terms of like they'll lose anything. And in terms of teams that want him, I don't know who would be a good fit. Like, I'm looking at contenders. I don't know if he'd be a good fit like on the Clippers, the Lakers, the Bucks. Like, it just doesn't seem like it makes too much sense for me. Maybe Portland, like you said, because he did play there before. And I know people thought like him and Dame had like some beef, but I guess they've said like they really don't. So maybe he will go there. The only thing is, I don't know how much sense that makes with once once Nurkic comes back. They already have Cantor, who's been playing pretty well. They have Carmelo Anthony, who's been playing a lot of 4. I don't know where LaMarcus fits in there necessarily, so it'll be weird. I think a team will definitely pick him up, at least to give him like one last chance in the league, kind of like what we saw with Joe Johnson, I believe, with the Rockets. Like, after he had like that playoff series with the Jazz, and then the Rockets are like, all right, we'll give him a chance, and he didn't really get another chance until like the Pistons signed him and waived him like a week later or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know where LaMarcus fits in.
Yeah, it can always go to like, we can think of like a middle of the range, not even necessarily contender, but playoff team, whether it's a Miami-ish or somebody in the Western Conference like Utah or something like that. It doesn't have to be one of the top 3 teams. It doesn't have to be one of the LA teams or the Bucks or the Nets, like when we're talking about spots that LaMarcus Aldridge can go. But certainly won't be San Antonio anymore, so just have to keep our eyes peeled.
Yeah, I completely agree that he's done with the Spurs. We're going to move on to something very interesting. They were recording this is March 11th, which, 1 year ago today was the day that the league shut down last year. We saw the stuff with Rudy Gobert catching COVID, and then the next day it was announced Donovan Mitchell got it. Then March Madness was canceled. And basically, the NBA shutting down was kind of like the first thing in sports that led to a domino effect with everything else. What do you think? Just to like quickly touch on it about how the league's been, since then with the bubble and like no fans to limited fans. How do you think like times have been since the monumental moment a year ago today?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. The first thing is just The first comment is just how crazy quick the 1 year went, right? Like, doesn't even feel like a year has passed. Second thing, in terms of the bubble, I think the NBA handled it best out of any of the four major sports in terms of COVID. The bubble was by far the most successful version of keeping players, quote unquote, safe and not contracting COVID and still allowing the season to happen. But it did cost a lot of money, as we know. What they're doing now, I think, is still very good. But now you're starting to see certain states put their own regulations on it. So, okay, maybe here in Texas, we can have X percentage of our fans, but in Chicago, no fans. So things like that. It's to the point now where it's up to each individual state, city, or team to dictate fans versus no fans and the actual capacity of it, whereas the bubble was just an NBA thing, so it didn't matter who was still in it or which teams were playing. It was kind of dictated by the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the bubble was something that was, I mean, we won't see it again, but it was just something that kind of happened on the fly. You know, nobody knew how to react, and then I think that the NBA handled it pretty well. The way that they've been handling things so far this year, even for the All-Star game just last weekend, like they said they tested people like 3 times in the day, which, I mean, that's like taking serious precautions. Of course, they have like less contestants for all the events, so I mean, it kind of makes sense to try and limit the spread or, you know, the chance of catching the virus. But yeah, just to keep it short, I think that it's been kind of weird that it's been like a year since then, but I don't know. I think it's going to be good once we get into like next season, and you know things should be back to normal by then.
That's what I'm thinking as well. At least hoping for that at the start of next NBA season, we're able to get back to where we started.
Yeah, one can only hope. But we're going to move on to our next topic, which is about teams that we are looking forward to watching in the second half of the season. Just like maybe 5 teams that we each have, teams that we're going to be like looking out for and see, like, you know, it could be like boom or bust for them. But I don't know, do you want to go first with your 5 teams? Should we like alternate? What do you think?
We can alternate. Let's do that. Okay. So what do you have in terms of an Eastern-Western Conference split?
Well, I actually have like 3 from the West, 2 from the East, and then I have like an honorable mention from the East as well.
Okay, so let's run through our teams in the East first. So, who'd you have in the East?
The first one I had was I had to put our Bulls because they've been so close this year. This seems like the best chance that they've had to make playoffs in the past like 4 years. And we're supposed to be getting Martin back, and Otto Porter Jr. is supposed to be coming back soon. But you know, we'll see how that necessarily affects the team. Hopefully for the better. That's what I'd assume. But I don't know. It's going to be weird. They could completely fall off like they have in years prior where they just drop down to like an 11-12 seed. But right now they're currently sitting at 9th, I believe. So, and everyone's really close in that mix. So if they're playing well, they very well could get maybe as high as like the 5 or 6 seed. But they could also probably drop down to like 11 or 12. But I don't know. That's a team I'm looking out for.
Okay, so the Bulls didn't make my cutoff, and none of the 5 teams I picked are necessarily considered to be like a top 5 contender or whatever. So I didn't want to include the Lakers or the Clippers or the Nets, things like that, because we know those teams are focused on the playoffs. So the first Eastern Conference team I included was the New York Knicks, clearly exceeding expectations. 4th in the Eastern Conference right now, active in trade talks at least, or at least in their interest, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen there. Too hard for me not to include the Knicks just because they've clearly exceeded expectations up to this point, and I don't know if they can maintain this 4th seed, but I think they're firmly in the playoffs, just a matter of where they end up finishing.
And that was my other main East team besides like the honorable mention that I have. But I have the Knicks. I think it's going to be interesting to see what their roster looks like after the deadline because like we mentioned earlier, they're in like all these trade talks and their team could see a little bit of an overhaul. And will Julius Randle keep playing like an all-star for the rest of the year? Will, you know, the Derrick Rose effect hold on for the rest of the year? Because right now they're like we've won 70% of their games since that trade. But yeah, and then I guess just to touch on really quick, since I had like an honorable mention. The Charlotte Hornets were my extra team because I think we're gonna see a new LaMelo Ball, and he's gonna get a lot more opportunity, and it should be fun to see.
Yeah, they've already said LaMelo will continue to start. Quickly, my other two Eastern Conference teams were the Atlanta Hawks first up. A team that's not lived up to expectations right now. Atlanta Hawks fired their head coach, Lloyd Pierce. Probably the most talent that Trae Young has had, but just not a lot of time for continuity given injuries all across the board. What do they do with John Collins? Do they trade him? He wants the max in the offseason. Hawks aren't so sure they want to give it to him. So a lot of give and take there. So that's my second team in the East. Third team is the Miami Heat. Pretty boring team to begin with, but early on just struggled a ton. Starting to get things back together. Want to monitor injuries, want to monitor if they're active at the deadline. Don't think that they're going to really make a move, but I think that they could make a move in terms of the standings and jump up pretty far. So I want to keep my eye on them.
Yeah, so you have one team in the West, right? I believe.
I have two in the West.
Okay.
Two.
All right, then I'll list, because I have three listed. I'll list two of them right now, and then we'll like alternate the other ones. The one of them that I had in the West was the Golden State Warriors. Right now, the Grizzlies last night played the Wizards, beat them, so really the Warriors are sitting at a 10 seed, which, I mean, yes, you'll make the play-in, but that's a lot of pressure because they're not going to have home court advantage in the play-in at this rate, and they'll have to win back-to-back games against, likely a team against Memphis or against Dallas, who's another team that I have here, because they have the second easiest schedule for the rest of the year. So maybe we'll see the Mavericks how we expected them to be at the beginning of the year. It seemed like the first half of the season was a struggle for them. Of course, they had people out, but I mean, we'll see. I think that the Mavericks have a good chance of turning stuff around. As for the Warriors, it should be interesting to see them as well, because I think there's a good chance that they'll end up in one of those play-in spots, and that could be dangerous.
Yeah, Dallas was one of the two Western Conference teams I picked. What do they do with Kristaps Porzingis? Is he actually on the trade block? Is he available? Do teams go after him? What do they do to supplement Luka? Or does Porzingis stay in? Does he just elevate his game and continue to be that second fiddle to Luka? So a lot of questions to be answered with Dallas. So that's why they are somebody I had. Who was that last Western Conference team you had?
Now, the last team I had, it might be weird because, they've been pretty much the best team all regular season, and that's the Utah Jazz. The reason I put them is because, we saw when they did the All-Star draft, and, Mitchell and Gobert were the last two. Mike Conley was put in as a replacement for Devin Booker, and people weren't too happy about that. And, you even heard LeBron say, even back in the day, nobody would ever pick the Jazz to play. So they were the last two. So that's almost like a sign of disrespect for them. We'll see if from now until even the end of the playoffs, if they take that personally, as Michael Jordan would say. But it should be interesting to see, because I think if they pulled off an upset and beat, whether it's the Lakers, the Clippers, or get even the finals or something like that, and if they did win it, that would be a crazy story to go by, and then people would look back at the season and look at all the disrespect that they got. But I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see, is this Jazz team for real, or are they, just kind of like a joke, as people would say?
Yeah, I'll certainly keep my tabs on Utah. Obviously, going to make the playoffs, for them, it's going to be important that I think they're rooting for both LA teams to get the 2 and 3 seeds, and for Utah to maintain that top seed, so that at the very least they wouldn't face either of the LA teams until the conference finals. And so that's for them. For me, my second Western Conference team was the Portland Trailblazers. We've seen that Dame has been able to sustain a lot with just him, basically. Without his without the second and third best player on Portland, sorry for that stumbling, with no Nurkic, no CJ. So when those guys come back, I'm interested to see how the role players that have stepped up big time now are able to kind of sit back into their roles. What does Gary Trent look like not playing 38 minutes a game? Does Cantor still provide some value as the backup five? So just little things like that. And Portland might have the ability now to jump up into one of those top 4 seeds, and that would certainly add some more parity in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I think it'll be a little bit of a sigh of relief for guys like Gary Trent or Enes Kanter, who have been getting a lot of minutes, and now they're not going to have to do quite as much once CJ and Nurkic come back. And like you said, I think that when they're healthy, they could be a top 4 team in the Western Conference. Of course, they're a little bit back. They're more like in the mix with Denver, San Antonio, and like Dallas, Golden State. They're a little bit ahead of those guys, and there's a little gap between them and the Clippers, who are 4th right now. So, I mean, we'll see. There still is a lot of games left, and there's a lot of time to turn it around. But they've been playing pretty well with just Dame, so you'd almost expect them to be better once they have their whole cast. But, I mean, yeah, we're going to move on to our daily picks to close out the show. Starting with March 12th, the Orlando Magic and the LaMarcus Aldridge lists San Antonio Spurs. Who do you got on this one?
Yeah, I still like San Antonio here, with or without LaMarcus Aldridge. I think they're just too much.
Yeah, I don't even know how much, if he would even play, if he was still like mutually in agreement being on the team. I got the Spurs though as well. I don't think that the Magic have much of a chance here. But on the 13th, we got the Kings and Hawks, 2 teams that right now are outside of not just the playoffs but the play-in. What do you got here?
Yeah, I like Atlanta. I think that they're going to have a better second half than they had a first half, which pretty hard to match the first half they had just with all the talent. So I think they start to get on the right track.
I'm going to go, it is still early in the second half of the season, so I'm going to go with the Sacramento Kings. They seem to win all these weird, irrelevant games, so I'm going to stick with that trend for Sacramento here. On the 14th, we got the Celtics and the Rockets. Who's winning this one?
I like Boston. It's Pie Day, Boston cream pie. Boston just rings true.
Yeah, I think if this was like a year ago, it might be a better contest between the two, but I think Boston should win this one for sure. On the 15th, we got a former playoff matchup from last year. We got the Clippers and Mavericks. Who's taking this one?
I think the Clippers. I like the new look Mavericks, and I think they'll have a better second half as well, but I just think the Clippers will win this.
I think the Clippers as well. I think people forget after All-Star break last year was when the Clippers looked their best. Of course, this is a little bit of a different team, but the main cast is pretty much still there, minus Montrezl Harrell. And I guess Doc Rivers for Tyronn Lue. But the point is, I'm still taking the Clippers in this one. I think they're going to start turning things around as well. On the 16th, though, we have the Thunder and the Bulls. The last time the Thunder won in a game that kind of irritated me because the Bulls really had that game. I don't know if you saw it, but that one was kind of annoying. Do you think the Bulls win this one or Thunder go 2-0?
Yeah, Billy Donovan revenge.
Yeah, I got the Bulls as well. On the 17th, we got the Hornets and the Nuggets. Who's winning this one?
I like Denver. I think that Denver will be another much improved second half team, and I think they'll beat Charlotte.
I got to go with the Hornets. I don't know what it is when doing this random game generator thing, but the Hornets are always on the 6th day of the week, and almost every time I pick them on that day, they win. So I'm going to go with the Hornets again. I don't know. I guess I'm sorry for the Denver Nuggets. They're just going to be cursed on that day. But on the 18th, we have the Jazz and Wizards to close things out. Who's taking that one?
Yeah, give me the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, I got the Utah Jazz, and shout out to Ersan Ilyasova, who just picked up a contract with them. One of my guys that I liked watching a lot in Milwaukee. So hopefully they can get a win. Wait, what'd you say? Sorry.
The Charge King.
Yeah, the Charge King. Before Kyle Lowry, there was Ersan Ilyasova. No, just kidding. But that's going to close out pretty much everything on the show. Any last thoughts?
Nothing. No, nothing big for me left to say. I think we covered all the big topics, but we'll certainly keep an eye on each of the 5 teams that we picked here and kind of monitor where they go in the second half along with the trade deadline.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch for sure. And as we were talking about Ilyasova, I'm looking forward to his Jazz debut. Not that anyone else cares, but that's going to be my highlight of the week if it even happens this week. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you all enjoyed, and we're out. Peace.